Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm your host, David Gornoski, and we're joined by our friend Tucker Goodrich, our nutrition researcher friend. How you doing, Tucker?
I'm good, David. How are you?
Doing well. Now, I know you've been out in the hiking again, right? You've been out there in the wilderness?
Yeah. I went for a little walk in the woods with my dog. We did kind of a proof of concept of how well my dog can do and how I can do. We did 62 miles in 3 days and about 12,000 feet of climbing.
Wow.
Meaning,
did you do that
I know
barefoot?
You don't have any of these down in Florida, but we went up hills.
Yeah, did you do that barefoot or what?
No, I did it in minimalist shoes. I don't do that barefoot because, you know, there's thorns, there's snakes. I once got poison ivy on a barefoot hike, and that was really annoying for a couple of weeks. You know, so I have friends who do, but I don't really feel like taking the time to go that last step of the way. I did the first day and a half. So the first day was about 22 miles and 5,600 feet of climbing in some minimalist sandals, which worked out really well. And then I switched over to some minimalist sneakers, you know, with no cushion, no foot support or anything, just making my foot do what they're supposed to do.
So when you're out there in nature and it's totally different from all the noise, I mean, you do a lot on social media too. I mean, what's the contrast like psychologically for you when you can get away from all the buzz and noise and constant cancellations of this person and lies about this thing and that thing? What's the difference like when you can get away from it for a few days and you're just sitting out there in nature with your dog?
Well, you may not be surprised to hear this, but it is absolutely wonderful. And I actually, for a change, I brought some headphones along and some podcasts to listen to. But I never actually used them. I never turned on the phone speakers or listened to anything except nature. Part of the reason for that was right after we started the hike, we came across a large wolf poop in the middle of the trail. And so I decided it was probably a good idea to be listening to what was going around me. And then on the third day, coming back through the same area on the way to the car, we actually heard the pack of wolves howling down in the valley below us. So sometimes it's just a good idea to focus on your environment and listen to what's going on around you.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. But I wanted to get your take first. Go ahead.
Beg your pardon? I mean, it's, the wonderful thing about doing something like that is you're really just in the moment the whole time for hours. I mean, we hiked for more than 12 hours the first day, and it was, taking in the views and listening to everything that's around and thinking about what's coming ahead and, trying to make sure I didn't get lost. It's a complete reset. It's really wonderful. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, not there in particular where I went in the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho, but anytime you can get out and get in nature and just kind of disengage from our civilization is going to be a wonderful thing for your psyche and your soul.
I wanted to get your take going back into the lunchroom drama of people. There is a recent TED interview with Klaus Schwab's boy Yuval Harari, where he says that, people are, the majority of people, vast majority of the population, we don't need them. And he says people realize, and they're correct in thinking that the future doesn't need me. You have all these smart people in California and in New York and Beijing, and they are planning this amazing future with artificial intelligence and bioengineering and global connectivity and whatnot, and they don't need me. So he thinks that AI and bioengineering and global connectivity and the smart people in California, New York, and Beijing have basically rendered the majority of the human population obsolete and unnecessary. Do you agree with that thought?
I presume he's going to volunteer to go first. Was that part of his talk?
No, I think he's talking about how he's going to control that future. He talks about evolution by intelligent design, his intelligent design, our intelligent design, not God.
I see. So he's going to get to pick and choose who gets to stick around, I presume. It's ironic that he is, I believe, Israeli. It's rather ironic that he hasn't learned anything from the 20th century about what happens when somebody gets to pick and choose who sticks around. But that said, unfortunately, most of what he's describing is just a fantasy. I mean, I was having a conversation about this today online. Artificial intelligence is a completely failed technology. It was introduced in 1956, and they figured by the end of the year they would have a computer that was equivalent in intelligence to a human. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet. What they call artificial intelligence nowadays is just basically statistical analysis of patterns, and what it totally lacks is any sort of intelligence. It still depends at the end of the day on some person to look at it and say, yeah, okay, this is right. And it can do a better job at pattern matching than people can. I mean, radiologists are now using it to find things in, the sort of images that we use to diagnose diseases, and that's a huge improvement in technology. But at the end of the day, you still need a doctor to say, yes, you have this disease, and we're going to have to treat you this way, right? So the idea that we're going to get, we can't even make a car that drives that replaces a person, right? So the idea that that's going to happen anytime in the near future is just a total fantasy.
Right. So when you see talks like this, what does he not know about AI that you do? What is he getting wrong here? Is he just an ideologue or what?
Apparently, he doesn't know anything about AI.
Yeah.
If he's saying that, if he thinks that, he hasn't even done basic research into what AI actually is and what its capabilities actually are. Right. I mean, we've had the smartest people in the country, or at least the folks who claim they're the smartest people in the country, folks at Apple and Google and Tesla trying to make self-driving cars, right? Now, driving a car doesn't require a heck of a lot of intelligence. I mean, I don't know how low your IQ has to be before they won't let you get a driver's license, but there are a lot of we all know from going out on the road that there are a lot of dumb people who can manage to drive a car around. Yeah. But we don't have a computer that's smart enough to do that or come anywhere close to it.
Right.
Right? And the honest people in that field say, okay, well, this is going to be a little harder than we originally thought, which takes you right back to 1956 when they thought they were going to have it by the end of the year. Whoops.
Wow. I want to get into some of the topic we talk about with seed oils. I wanted to start off by saying what these futurists at the World Economic Forum are saying about the future. But then, of course, they're always telling us to eat vegetable oils. I saw that you had linked to this or retweeted this paper talking about dietary patterns and risk of dementia, the 3-city cohort study, and a quote from it saying regular consumption of omega-6 rich oils, not compensated by consumption of omega-3 rich oils or fish, was associated with an increased risk of dementia. And
yes,
I mean, it says dive into this a little bit. What is going on here? Because we don't talk about dementia a lot. We talk about a lot of other diseases in vegetable oils.
Well, it's dementia can mean Alzheimer's. That's what we typically think of. But there are a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. There's, Parkinson's disease. And all of them seem to have this common thread of oxidative stress. And in the brain, where the brain doesn't really like the linoleic acid that we generally talk about in our discussions, which is the primary fat that we get when we consume seed oils, right? But the body converts it into another fat, which is also an omega-6 fat called arachidonic acid. And one of the things that they see in the brain, arachidonic acid is even more susceptible to breaking down than linoleic acid is. It's even more polyunsaturated than linoleic acid is, and it's a longer fat. And the brain needs it in small amounts. It's especially important in babies when they're developing it, and they've actually figured out that, we need to put this into infant formulas, right? So it's important, but it's important in the right amounts. And what that paper seems to be describing is that an excess of that fat and a lack of the fats that we get from consuming pastured meat and fish, particularly DHA, makes the brain more susceptible to the oxidative damage from arachidonic acid breaking down into the same toxins that we always talk about. And what they see in these neurodegenerative diseases is that arachidonic acid breaks down into HNE, the toxin that we've talked about a lot. And in, for instance, Alzheimer's disease, they see that the plaques, the beta amyloid plaques that we hear about, have these omega-6 toxins in them. And it seems to be part of the process of the brain breaking down that leads to neurodegeneration and dementia. And it's, I hadn't seen this before the fellow tweeted it to me, but there's a whole lot of evidence looking at this. And I mean, we're at the point now where the line of evidence that medicine has been pursuing on how to treat Alzheimer's disease, the idea that you can get rid of these beta amyloid plaques and that will make the brain better, is a total failure. It's never worked. Every single attempt that they've done to do that, even the successful ones where you reduce the amount of these plaques in the brain, doesn't produce any benefit to brain function. So we really need to start turning around and looking at this from a different way. Now, Alzheimer's has been called... Alzheimer's is very similar to some other diseases that also feature these plaques. Diabetes features these plaques, and age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of blindness, features these plaques. And our friend Chris Kenobi, the ophthalmologist, tells us that that's a disease that is widely thought in that area of medicine to be caused by excess consumption of omega-6 fats. And I think we need to consider that, the eye is basically an extension of the brain, and we need to consider that the damage that we're seeing in the brain may have the same causation as the damage that we see in the eyes, and that we need to consider, hey, maybe, there's a whole range of avenues of, both from depression and aggression and violence, where excess omega-6 fats in our diet seems to be having negative effects on people, including IQ, by the way. Back to our artificial intelligence conversation. We need to, in fact, I just interviewed a scientist, Tom Brenna, who specializes on how to optimize brain development in human children. And he says absolutely that you need to reduce linoleic acid and make sure you get enough omega-3 fats. And he did a study in human children in Malawi where he showed that reducing linoleic acid, replacing it with oleic acid and DHA produced better brain development in children who had been malnourished.
Wow. That's so not only does it have a connection to degeneration like dementia, but it also can lower IQ if you're eating lots of vegetable oils, right? Even at a child level.
Yeah, well, folks should go back to the we had Amir Taha on your podcast, and that was one of the things that we talked about with him. He's another fellow who's done a lot of research into brain health and omega-6 fatty acids. And in fact, when I asked him at the end of that discussion if he could do any research project that he wanted to do, what would it be? He said he wanted to demonstrate that linoleic acid is the cause of Alzheimer's disease.
Wow. So now, is it like vegetable oils are an acute effect on IQ, or if you remove them, your IQ will go back up? How does that work for the people thinking about these ideas?
Well, it's definitely not an acute effect. And the effect that Tom Brenna saw in the children in Malawi was notable enough so that the World Health Organization is changing their guidelines on how children like that should be fed. But it wasn't a huge difference. But the problem is when, we know that when you feed pregnant women a lot of linoleic acid, it has negative effects on the children. And then you feed them their entire life. There's just all of these points in development and life where you need proper, I'm going to call it proper nutrition. I'm going to say that having too much linoleic acid in your diet is a form of malnutrition. And this constant breakdown of what's happening in your body, it may lower your IQ when you're developing. It may make you more aggressive and, have worse mental health during your life. And then it may predispose you to increased rates of dementia when you're older, right? It just, all of this stuff adds up over the course of a life spent in malnutrition.
Wow. So this is not something that should be taken lightly as just a side little thing. This is a very big deal for folks considering some of these effects. If something is making you less intelligent and more aggressive and forgetful at a rapid decay level over time, and you're getting obesity, and you're getting not just that, but things like autoimmune disorders are related to these vegetable oils as well, as you've pointed out. I mean, what does it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a panoply of problems.
Yeah, exactly. And
now, I've heard, I was telling somebody about vegetable oils at a restaurant, and they said, no, we don't have vegetable oils. We have canola oil. And they said canola oil is healthy. Tell people about canola oil.
Well, there's canola oil is one of the better vegetable oils. Let's give credit where it's due. But they did a experiment in India where they took guys who had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is the most common liver disease now, something that didn't exist before the 1980s, and they put them on 3 different fats. Their standard dietary fat was safflower oil, or they put them on canola oil, or they put them on olive oil, which has typically the lowest amount of omega-6 fats. And their liver disease got better, their insulin resistance got better, and they lost weight. And canola oil was kind of a middle ground, right? So it's better than this high oleic safflower oil that they normally eat, but it wasn't as good as the lower omega-6 olive oil. So those are 2 of the most common diseases now in the United States, fatty liver disease and type 2 diabetes. And some would argue that fatty liver disease is, basically the liver's manifestation of type 2 diabetes. And, unfortunately, canola oil was not as healthy as the olive oil that they used in that study. So, yeah, it's better. I mean, but it's not going to fix the problem as much as we need it fixed.
So is canola oil healthy to cook with, in your opinion?
I don't think any of these are healthy to cook with. Again, it does have less omega-6 fats, so it's going to be better than some of the other ones. But even canola oil basically comes out of the factory rancid and then gets more rancid when it's sitting on the shelf. And rancid fats are toxic fats. I mean, I just found a couple of papers from the 1940s where they were discussing, providing food to soldiers, and one of them was a whole big conversation on how bad rancid fats are for you. So this is not news. And, when canola oil sits on the shelf, it comes out of the factory rancid, and it gets more rancid just sitting there on the shelf. So why would you want to eat something? Why would you want to eat that?
Right. Yeah, I don't think...
I get that there are, folks who can't afford anything else, and that's why we need to come up with better fats and produce them at a price point where all these folks have a better choice.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think like a big thing of ghee or coconut oil is that much more expensive than canola oil, is it? I mean, is it double the price? I haven't really thought about that.
Well, it depends where you are. If you're like you or me or most people listening to this in the United States, then yeah, we have some healthier options. But there's 1.2 billion people in Japan and 1 billion people in China, and they don't have as many choices as we do.
I think you mean India, not Japan, right?
Oh, yes, I meant India, not Japan. That's right.
Right. So, it's what do you think is the after all the research that you continue to do on this topic of vegetables, what's the bottom line thing that should make people change their purchase of these products? What is the biggest kind of conclusive thought? If you can't sort through all the data, all the diseases, all the stuff, what is it about these things that you think should be something that should make you want to commit to not eating these products again?
I watched a movie, True Grit, which was a John Wayne movie that came out again, that was remade a few years ago, and I watched the two versions back to back, and the difference in the people between the two movies was striking. I mean, people being overweight was almost unheard of back when that started, and all the diseases. My wife works in medicine. She's a nurse, and she comes home with these stories about the horrors that people undergo because of obesity, the amputations. I mean, the worst one I've heard of is guys getting gangrene of the testicles. And it's just, all of that stuff, I think, is caused by this malnutrition that we're imposing on ourselves from consuming too much of these unhealthy, rancid fats. Walk around. Everybody, somebody has somebody in their family who's seriously unhealthy with these chronic diseases. And that is what should motivate you, to fix it yourself and to help them fix it. This is a problem that we can solve ourselves by helping each other and by spreading the word and making people understand what's causing these diseases that are afflicting so many of us and so many of our families.
Well, very good. I really appreciate it, Tucker, your thoughts and your diversity of research that you've done on this topic. And I can attest that many people continue to reach out, sharing their testimonies of lives transformed just by making a simple step of removing these products. There's a lot of debate about what else you can do, but just removing these products can be a common point of agreement that can have a huge, huge effect on your life in a positive way, and really improve the lives of people around you who depend on you for healthy, non-toxic food. So thanks for what you're doing, and I want people to check out yelling-stop.blogspot for Tucker Goodrich's blog in his research, and also search for Tucker Goodrich on YouTube to subscribe to his channel for his interviews that he does there. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.